Megan Keefe, and if I have not gotten to meet you in person or hug your neck, I hope at a future event that I will get to do that, because I would love to meet you and hear your story. People's first place stories or health journey stories are one of my favorite stories to hear about people. The other one is sometimes their love story. That's my number one, but health journey would be my second favorite. As I started sitting down and getting my thoughts from my head onto paper, I thought, everybody might not even know what the definition of healthy lifestyle is. And so I looked it up in the dictionary, and Merriam-Webster dictionary says beneficial to one's physical, mental, and emotional side. And I'll even add that spiritual side. And so when you think of the word beneficial, I feel like it's positive, but the first thing that comes to mind, which is so funny as I was looking at that definition, it reminded me of a verse that we've heard a lot in First Place. I heard it a lot growing up, but in 1 Corinthians 6:12, this is kind of Megan's version, everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. And in one of our videos about nutrition, we hear that verse. And Charlotte Davis does a great job talking about that and explaining that verse in detail. And so when I hear the word beneficial, that's what I think of. I think about that verse that, we're allowed to do a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that we should. And so the benefits is what really where First Place, I feel like, helps narrow it down for us. I try really to have health choices that are what is God's best, because we can have good choices, we can have okay choices, but I really try when it comes to my health benefits to think what is God's best. And so I just have 3 tips for us tonight that have helped me personally. Some things that I grew up in the home with my mom, and some things that I have passed down in my family with my kids to promote just wellness and how we want it to be a lifestyle for all of our children and for me and my husband as well. And so the first one I would say is everyone's journey looks different. And, something that you may struggle with may not be something that's a struggle in my family, but something that you may have found victory in. Man, it may have almost mastered me in some days in my life. And so that's kind of the first thing I want you to consider when you start looking at where does God have me right now? What do I want to do for my kids? Is remembering that everybody's journey looks different. I remember one of the very first meals that I cooked for my new husband and my 3 bonus kids. It wasn't anything fantastic. It was just grilled chicken, green beans, and rice. And, for most people, their favorite thing is probably not green beans. And the oldest of my bonus kids, really, she is a rule follower. She tries everything. We have never really had a lot of pushback with her when it came to food. And then my youngest one, he would eat his and somebody else's and go back for more. He is the biggest out of the 3 of my bonus kids. And so we didn't have trouble with him finishing his food. But my middle child, my oldest of my boys, oh man, he struggled with vegetables. And that night when I cooked that very simple meal, it was a battle over, I think it may have been 8 green beans, not even anything insurmountable. And we tried reverse psychology. Well, we're going to have popcorn and all these desserts. Don't you want to eat your 7 green beans, Graylin? And he went to bed that night not eating his green beans, no family time, no dessert, none of that. It totally blew up in our face because we thought for sure he would just down them. And so what I realized over the years with him is I had to be careful with portion control with him, because we would make his plate and he would just be focused on whatever the vegetable was. No matter what it was, especially if it was green, he struggled. And so we started small. All right, how about 2 green beans, buddy? And then we would get another one. And so we helped him realize that it was just food. And it was a battle that we really didn't want to fight every single time we had vegetables. Because guess what? We had vegetables with every meal when it came to dinner time. And so that was kind of a tough thing for us to realize with him. And it took, I can't say that we learned it after 2 or 3 meals. It took some time for us just, his will, our will, what's really going on, disobedient, all of those things, to realize the simple thing is let's make this easy for him. Let's not set him up for failure and for tears at the end of a meal. That was not the type of family time at the table that we wanted to do. So remembering how your family may need to start small will help make it not so difficult. Your family may not have vegetables. They may not exercise. They may not even want to be healthy. But if you come in and say, I'm clearing out the cabinets and we're doing all these crazy things with no sugar and if you do all that, they're probably not going to be supportive. And it's just not the best way to approach it. So look at your family, look at what their struggle is, and maybe just zero in on one. Maybe it's just, let's have a meal one night a week at the table together. That is a healthy choice instead of throwing it in the back seat on the way to the ball game. I know that happens, but that family time of sharing a meal together is just as important as eating those vegetables. So just to kind of recap that, remember, everybody's journey looks different. The second thing that I kind of muddled with because I just wasn't sure what parts of our four-sided person of our kids this would really contribute to. But you listen to a few things and you'll be able to decide, okay, yeah, that definitely is physical and mental. But the next one I think really addresses our physical and mental health with our children and with us. And it's being present. And it's probably one of the best things you can give to the next generation, whether it's your nieces and nephews, your kids, your grandkids, maybe the neighbor kids that came over, but just being present. And for my family, what this looks like for us is when my girls, they're starting to like sports, which I love so much, but we have a basketball hoop. And so instead of saying, hey, Hensley, Hadley, y'all go shoot some hoops while whatever, I go outside with them. Sometimes I feel like shooting. Sometimes I'm just out there watching, but I play with them. I'm able to. And I'm definitely not 22 where I can really do the things in the yard that I used to be able to. But they love volleyball. They love basketball. They love to ride bikes. So I actually am present there with them doing those things. And sometimes with families, that may you may have to really be creative to think of what can we all do, or what do my kids do? And they may want to try something that you have no desire to do, but that's okay. Because just showing up and watching them is very important. Even if you can't skateboard or rollerblade, or you fill in the blank of what they really want to do as their physical exercise. Make them play outside. Make them join a team. And when I say make, I don't mean like they're kicking and screaming, you're dragging them to the gym, but maybe should suggest that if they never have thought about trying karate or, maybe playing on an actual team sport, have them go to the park. I was just telling Helen earlier, I had a little boy in my class, I teach kindergarten, who came to school this year and had never been on a swing. And so we talked about that. He had never been to a park, and that just blew my mind because my kids have been going to a park since they could actually walk. And so those are different places that you can take and do. Outside, you can take them to a park, but just places for them to get some physical exercise. I was reading some statistics, and this kind of made me sad for how much physical exercise my 5-year-olds get at school. But it says adolescents should have 60 minutes or more of physical activity each day. So, if your child goes away to school, there's a lot of their day you don't have control of, but it is actually a state law that kids have to have PE outside time. So you don't have to worry about that never happening. But when they come home from school, instead of letting them sit in front of the TV or even getting started on their homework, let them play, let them do something outside, have a snack. My mom used to do that for us. She would say, okay, you guys want a snack or go outside first? And so those were kind of some downtime where we didn't have to be so bombarded with school stuff for us to, like my kinder say, get some wiggles out and have a little snack. The more the priority is held to physical activity from you as the adult, the more fun it can be, the easier it will become saying, this is something we're doing as a family. In my home growing up, in my home now, Church is non-negotiable. Now, I'm not saying we went every Sunday or every time the doors were open, but that was just not up for discussion. Like, we get to go to church. And so I think when we start having that attitude about our healthy lifestyle, it can help change, like, oh, they mean business. We are going to make good choices when it comes to food. Mom does want us to play outside. And so that starts with you as the role model or the leader setting that example. Being present also means not just physically being there and participating, but putting your phone down and turning it off, or the devices, or it could even be the TV. You know, sometimes my husband and I will sit in the living room and we're both there, but we're both on our phones, or one's watching TV and one's on the computer. And we may be physically present in the room together, but we are not present when it comes to here. And I'll tell you a funny story about Hensley. I think we were in the living room and she was dancing or something, and I was just kind of watching. And she came up to me and she said, "No, Mom, I mean, turn your face to me." I mean, she wanted my full attention, the body language, the face, the eyes, everything. And so, whether your kid is 2, when that happened with Hensley, or 22, they want that FaceTime. They want you to actually be engaged with them. And we have to make a choice of that. You know, sometimes when I can't find my Bible because I left it in the car, if it's like a Monday, and I use my Bible app on my phone, I can get so distracted from notifications or things on my phone. Did you know you can turn notifications off of your phone? All of them. So you never know anything. And I had to do that because what I was doing is I'm reading my Bible app and so is texting me. And so then I'm clicking on it and then I'm off and so I had to kind of get smart with that and not use my Bible app, but also turn those notifications off. There's also something interesting on my phone that was a little frightening the first time I realized it. There is a program on your phone that can actually tell you how much time you have spent on your phone. And it'll give you a notification that says something like, your screen time was up 14%. I feel like it says it in that voice. And sometimes I'm like, oh, that was terrible. And so that's another thing on your phone. If you really want to know how much you're on your phone, if you really do, then you can do that. And it's frightening that we spend that much time on our devices. At least it was for me, because that was not a really good thing. One thing interesting when I was talking to my mom about just being present and on devices is a way as a family that you could set some goals to have some boundaries with that, or maybe even fast. And she was like, well, what about Lent? Lent's coming up. And that would be a great time as a family to say, we're going to be off social media for this many days, or after 4 o'clock, we're all going to put our phones in the basket, or I don't know. You know, I have even thought about going and getting a real alarm clock so I don't have my phone by my bed, because my husband, one of us would at least, but you know, I'm just trying to think of something where I'm not so connected to my phone, even though we don't have a landline. But that's a great way to not hear my phone buzz in the night and sit up and, you know, my 8 hours of sleep is interrupted because of some spam call or something like that, you know. But that would be a great time for you to look at your family and say, why don't we not partake in, and it could be TV, maybe it's not device time. Another great thing that you could do is maybe during the week you don't have device time, and that's a treat for the weekend that you could cut back and do that. But start small. Again, don't just come in with all these things to your family and say, look at all the new things we're going to do, because you want them to be on board and you don't want it to be a total shell shock. But you may be surprised at that FaceTime. And I don't mean FaceTime on your phone, but that FaceTime with your kids, how much they crave that. And I'll tell you, when my bonus kids, we'd have dinner and I'd try to cook like 3 times when they'd be at my house. And the oldest one, she was probably only about 6th grade. And my bonus kids call me Marmy. And she said, Marmy, I just love being at your house. And I said, well, Riley, why is that? I'm sitting there thinking, well, what have we done that's so much greater than our moms? And she said, because we don't have a schedule. And when we have dinner, we just sit here and talk and laugh for 20 minutes after we're done eating. And I thought, Okay, that was not even rocket science. Like, we wanted to catch up with them. And so my three big kids who were teenage preteens, they were loving that time, undivided. We've eaten together, and here we get to talk about anything we want with our dad and our stepmom. And so kids love that time. And so we have to make that FaceTime. Some You may even have to have your calendar and pencil it in. We are having a dinner together at the table on Thursday nights. And you know what? When your kids get older, that's harder. I mean, I grew up in a home, there were four of us. We played sports. We were all very involved with our school and our church. And so sometimes during the week, we did not get to do that every single night. But Sundays, we always did on Sundays. Sunday was a time where no matter what, we were all together after church, and we kind of just reset for the week. And it was a really great time with my family. All right, tip number 3. We've talked a little bit about the physical. We've talked a little about the mental and the emotional benefits. But I think this is the area I really want to camp out with. And I just love how God connects things, because Helen and I were talking earlier, and she prayed and just said some things about how the most important thing is for our kids to come to know Jesus. And that is what God told me we have to camp on last, is that those other 3 parts of our kids and ourselves, those are important. And God values us to be healthy in all of those areas. But when it comes to our spiritual side, it is definitely number 1. And so we're going to camp out there for a few minutes when it comes to the spiritual health of our kids. It may be your grandkids. I know there's some Grammys and some Mimis on here, and so I don't want you to feel left out. But even for our families, my shepherd, which is what I call my pastor, because I love to call him that, he recently shared, we've been talking about God's design for the family. And so he's saying some things, and I'm like, oh, this is good. I got to write this down. And so he recently shared in his sermon about the top 5. And I told my mom about this. She was like, oh, yeah, I've heard of that. And he quoted a guy named Reggie Joiner. And Reggie Joiner has written a lot of books. I can probably put those somewhere because I have a list of them on youth or teenagers, adolescents, just on kids and things that we need to know as parents about them, and some parenting tips. But the top indicators as whether your kids will remain engaged in their faith is if they're serving in their local church and they understand why they are doing that. The next thing is that they have 5 additional voices that are speaking truth into them outside of maybe mom and dad. If mom and dad are speaking biblical truths into children, that there's 5 voices outside of mom and dad, then the statistics of them going to college and following the Lord and become a young adult and following the Lord, you guys, it is astounding that churches, when you look at, I read this article and now I can't remember what it is, but the number that stuck out to me, that the ages of people in churches right now start at 50. And I am 42. And I think about all the years between when I became a believer and 50. That's a lot of life without Jesus. And so it's important that we plant those seeds as kids and adolescents, that they continue and don't wait until they're 50 and say, oh man, I've got to go back to the Lord. Not that that's not a terrible thing. That is a wonderful thing for the Lord to restore. But that's a lot of years without Jesus. Let me find my place real quick. So some of those 5 voices could be coaches. They could be teachers. They could be a pastor. It could be another family member. I think about all the truth that my girls get from both of my parents, from all of their uncles. Sometimes, they teach them things they're not supposed to. And I mean, like, not bad things, but, the things uncles teach their nieces. But this is what I want you to think about with your kids and your grandkids, is who are the influential voices that they are hearing. And for a lot of our kids and grandkids, I mean, my children, my 2 littles are 6 and 8, and they ask for phones and stuff all the time. And, we've gotten to a place with not social media, with like YouTube and some of the things that they watch, that we just say no, like, you're not watching that. It's trash. If you want to do a coloring game or something else to grow your brain, then we're going to be okay with that. But social media, music, their peers, and hopefully you are one of those for your kids as well. I have kids in my class at school that they don't hear any truths from their parents. And so they hear that from me as their teacher. And I love on them. I speak truth over them and I want the best for them. But, I'm saying some of these things to you guys of what you're supposed to do. And my mom challenged me with a question. She said, so what about blended families? And I'm a part of one of those. What about grandparents? What are you supposed to do if you can't be that to that child all the time? And I have 21 children that I have 8 hours a day, and then some of them go home to a mess. So what can you do for those students, for those kids, those grandkids, the neighbors' kids that you don't have them all the time? I'm glad you asked that question, or maybe you even thought about it. And so the biggest and the best thing that you could do is to pray for them. You really can pray for them by name, for those truths that you pour into them to seek deep into their heart, for them to really, really understand and know who they are in Christ. And the time that you do have that with them, you can pour into them. When my bigs are with us, we go to church. We spend time with other families that I don't worry about if they're at their house, what they're going to hear or see. They have healthy families that they see us do life with, and they get to see that modeled out in our home. And so we take that little bit of time and we just water those seeds and do whatever we can to hopefully have a sweet harvest from the Lord one day. The other thing that you can do is the adults that may be over them. When I think of my 3 bonus kids, they live with their mom and their their stepfather most of the time. And so those are 2 adults that I know sometimes conversations with them won't change anything, but praying for them usually works way better than me calling and telling them, this is what I think you need to do. So praying for those adults that may be speaking into your kids or your grandkids, their coaches. My husband just got finished coaching Hensley's basketball team. And I listened to him at the end of the season, thank parents for letting him coach them. And then he encouraged them, let them play whatever they want. Don't make them just play this sport. Multiple sport athletes are very important. And just some of the truths that he was just telling these kids, who some of them were twirling in the grass, not even listening, but it's important that those voices in our kids, lives and that are influential, that we are praying for them because they are making a difference in their life. Talk to them about church, pray with them, memorize scripture. Hadley went through a really tough time last year, and it's been a while outside of First Place that I really was like memorizing scripture. And of all people, her guidance counselor, who is a strong believer, sent me all these verses. You and Philip and the girls need to start memorizing these. Pray over Hadley at night. And I was like, and it was so awesome to watch my girls memorizing scripture, but I was a little bit taken back that I thought, gosh, they're 6 and 8 and we're just now memorizing scripture with them. We got to catch up. And so memorizing scripture with them is really great. Another really great thing you can do with your kids is celebrate the prayer request that the Lord answers. That is so great, to give credit where credit is due and to circle back and say, look what God did. And to pray for even those small things that you think that is not a prayer request at prayer request time, because we have some of those when Hadley wants to pray for everybody she saw that day. But we do, because I'm not going to tell my child not to pray to God over her friends at school. But celebrate those victories that the Lord answers, yes, in front of you guys, which is really great. So one of the things that I wanted to end with is a story about how praying for your kids, thinking about their spiritual health is very important. And the small things that you may be doing now are going to make an impact. And one of those things that I also think that you need to do as an adult, I know everybody doesn't do their quiet time at the same time. Some people are morning people. That's me. So if you didn't want to be roommates with me and you're a morning person, we'd have trouble. But I like to get up early. And like Helen said, if she wants to get up early without an alarm, she's got to go to bed so that her body wakes up naturally because she's had enough rest. And so in order for me to get up in the morning before my husband and my two girls get moving, I do have to go to bed early so that I can get up and have time to meet with the Lord. And, I love even as an adult, when I'm at my parents' house and I get up early in the morning, guess who's already up in the den doing their quiet time, spending time with the Lord, reading their Bible? My dad is. And my mom did that quite often growing up too. But dad would, goodness, I think sometimes he gets up at 4:30, partially because he can't sleep, but he took the time to meet with the Lord. And so I love that if my girls get up sometimes before they're supposed to, they're coming in and I'll say, "What are you doing, Hadley?" "Mom, I'm up. Can I turn the TV on really quiet?" And I'll say, "You can, but mommy's going to go in here and read her Bible." And, sometimes they just want to snuggle, and I will close my Bible and put it down because I can always come back to that. But I think it's important for our kids to see us reading and praying out loud. That's another great, I guess it's a habit we practice with our kids very young, to pray out loud, because it can be very daunting to pray as an adult out loud sometimes. But if you practice it makes it a little bit easier. But I wanted to share a story. I'm circling back to it, about the importance of praying for your kids. And, as I was writing this down, I thought, goodness, I don't pray for my kids enough. And I heard a story recently of a woman. She had passed away, and they were going through all of her things. Her kids were, and in the back of her closet, she didn't have a closet like mine that she actually could walk in hers. And there was indentions in the floor in the back of her closet where she for years prayed for her kids. And I thought, golly, Lord, I definitely don't have indentions. And so I was challenged by that. And as I wrote this down, of being very intentional praying for my kids, because I have to. So when I was a kid growing up, and probably even into my college years, my parents would say, "I'm praying for you," and I believed them. Or sometimes I'd call my mom or call dad and tell them I needed to be praying over whatever this big, catastrophe in my life was at the time. And I felt those prayers, and we would celebrate those when the Lord answered them, or when the Lord put me on their heart and he knew that I needed prayer at that moment, and they would pray for me. And I've always felt that I needed that. I was grateful to have parents that would pray for me, even when I didn't ask, but especially when I did ask. And I'm 42 years old, and my mom, she's been doing this for a long time, but just recently, she probably could tell when, she has taken a day for each of her kids. And there's 4 more kids now because we're all married. But she will text us and say, "Hey, it's your day. How can I pray for you?" And, I've come to like, okay, mom hasn't texted me yet, and I have something I really need her to pray for me today. And so, that has become important to me, to know that she's going to pray for me. But also, I don't think she's ever texted me and said, "I'm good, I don't need any prayer." That has never happened. I'm always having something. But it's exciting as a kid knowing your parent is going to text you and say, "What do you need prayer for today?" And so I think that that's important, no matter the age of your kids at all, to say, "Hey, I'm praying for you today. Today's your day." If you have multiple kids, or a kid that really makes you parent, maybe they need multiple days of prayer. But take the time to do that. And if your kids are big enough to know that what a prayer request is, ask them. Say, "Today's your day, buddy. Well, how can mommy pray for you today?" Or even grandparents. I am blessed to have had 2 sets of grandparents that were strong believers, and until the day they died, walked with the Lord. And that is a great testament to my parents that we thankfully are passing on to our children. But that's just a really powerful and easy thing as parents that we can do for our kids. And so if you don't already, ask God where you can do better with your kids' spiritual health, because he promises in his word, he tells us, "Seek me and you will find me. Ask and I will answer. I will give you what you want." When we need wisdom, he gives it to us. And so I think that that's important to maybe even step back and self-evaluate and say, how can I do better, and start just with the spiritual? Because I'll tell you, in my first place class, we talk about this all the time. When our spiritual life is just well that week, we may not have lost 10 or 15 pounds, but man, we tracked well, we made good choices, we spent time with the Lord. It's like when we get the spiritual part right, the other things seem so much easier. And that's what the Lord really wants, is he wants the spiritual health first. All those other things, those are just side benefits that we get to experience because of all we're doing to better ourselves and our health spiritually. And so praying for your kids, it's going to change them on the inside, and you will start to see that outside. If wellness isn't important to them, it will become important to them. And it will make those other healthy habits less difficult or more natural, or they just say, we're going to be on board because we see mom, dad, Mimi, how her spiritual health is very important. And those other three sides of us will become just as important. Thanks, Helen.
Wow, Megan, that was awesome. You almost made me cry a little bit. I think I'm going to have to pick a day and start. I pray for, I have it in my calendar. So I calendar the same kids that I've been praying for since I was their den leader. So we're talking, you
Oh,
know,
that's awesome.
they're 32 now. I pray for those same group of kids that are still my son's friends. They're all, you know, they feel like they're part of my family, kind of a thing. So at 8 a.m. every morning, I get a little reminder in my phone to pray for these kids, or adults now, but you know what I mean. So that's cool. But I like telling your kids, today's your day. How can I pray for you?
I
I like,
know. I feel like it makes you feel special. I mean, I am special. I know that because I'm my mom's only daughter. So I already knew that. But it does, because I mean, even with, you know, the connection that I know it's made with my husband and my sister-in-laws, you know, that they are important with this too. I'm not just going to pray for your spouse, but you get your own day as well. And so I don't know all the benefits of that, but I know it's been important because my husband will say, yeah, I talked to your mom today, you know, and I just love that because I know what that was about, you know. It's okay.
exactly. Well,
I got choked up when I wrote this, and I said, Lord, please don't let me boo hoo when I'm talking about this, please.
amen. Well, guys, we have some question and answer time. So if you have a question for Megan or any of us, just let us know. You can go to the Q&A on the bottom of your, I think it's on the bottom of most people's screens. It's one of those little icons, and you can write your question. We also were thinking if you wanted to share what was the best parenting tip you ever got? If you're a parent, Megan was saying we could ask, you know, if you had a tip and we could share them on if anybody puts one in there. So I'm going to share the one that I got in. I was a working mom, and the one of the good tips that I got was that I needed to prioritize my marriage over my kids. So I know that's a little, but my boss said you have to go on a date, like with your spouse intentionally. If you work and you have kids, you feel guilty that you're going to leave them at home. But they did it once a month, and that was my boss. He was a him, but his wife worked. So anyway, that was such, as weird as that is. And then I took a parenting class when my son was in kindergarten, and they said, like you said, to spend once a week to spend 20 minutes. It doesn't sound like a lot, but 20 minutes of one-on-one time with your kid, with no, like, take them to the park, go on the
Mm-hmm.
car ride, but like intentionally spend 20 minutes with each of your children with undivided attention, you know, no TV, no devices. We didn't have devices back then. Well, we had Nintendo. I guess Nintendo, I was always competing with Nintendo or Sega. Anyway,
That's
how
good.
about
I like
you? All right. Vicky said she never had to clean her plate. Best parenting tip ever. I wish my mom had. Good job, Vicky. Awesome. All right. And we have a question too. What were the 5 indicators that kids would stay in church?
Oh, so I said indicators, and it was supposed to be 5 the 5 voices. The
Oh,
two
five.
indicators, it was the 2 indicators that they were serving in church and they understood why. And it was the 5 voices. Sorry about that.
All right.
Good
Serving in
question.
church and knowing why they're serving in church
Mhm.
were the 2 indicators. And then what?
And you can use because you have to at first. You really can. Like
Yeah,
you can do that. That's okay. And when they understand.
I for sure the voices that your kids are hearing, because sometimes it could be their friend's voice that
Mhm.
is driving the bus, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I hear
Yeah.
that already a little bit with my girls. Well, my friend said this, and so we have to talk about, well, we don't do that in our home, so
Yeah. One of things to know is that Restore Me is in May. And so, but Restore Me before that, we are almost ready to launch the My Place to Race site. You guys, this is our 3rd year of doing the fundraiser for first place, where it's a 40-day challenge. So it's going to be March 20th through April 28th this year. And it's 40 days, 40-day fitness challenge. And there's a couple of cool new things going on. But another thing, we've listened to a lot of people, and so we're excited. So that's new to coming. You'll be hearing about that very shortly, so you can get registered. It's the same price, $60. And if you have a team or you're joining a team, once you have 10 people on your team, it's $10 off. So they'll give everybody back $10, and then they'll only charge $50 for anybody after 10, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So that's how the system works. And so we're excited about that. Restore Me is in May at Sandy Cove, and we have people that fly into Sandy Cove all the time. So if that is something you're interested in, I'm even personally glad to help you find transportation, like hook you up with other people, if that makes sense. And so that is Restore Me is May 21st and 23rd. Next month's webinar is Wounded by Winning, and it is with Pastor Renell Johnson, who Vicky got to meet and hear. Oh, Megan's heard him too at Sandy
Mhm.
Cove. He was one of the speakers at Sandy Cove, and he speaks on how we're all wounded. Let's face it, we're all wounded in some way or another, and how the Lord uses those wounds to win. And so that's going to be his topic next month in March.
He's a great young man.
And we're getting ready to get Summit ready to go live too. So we have all kinds of stuff, and you can register for Wellness Week now. And then I think that's the newest stuff. A New Beginning is the Bible study that we have out right now. My group just started it. We're finishing up week 1. So I'm excited about that. But a lot of people are still breaking through was the Bible study that came out in the fall. A lot of people are doing breaking through right now. And then I noticed Still Becoming is a devotional by Laura Acuna that we now sell on our website. And she helped us create a leader's resource, and she recorded videos for us. It's a 31-day devotional, and we have it set up as a 6-week. If you want to do it with your group, you can do it for 6 weeks. So that's also new and available. Can we all say thank you to Megan and her
You're
heart
welcome.
for kids? I just love it. She's back working full time now, so she absolutely understands healthy kids, and we love that. I love following her. If you don't know her on Facebook, you should go make friends with Megan Keefe and pay attention to some of those pictures, because you get to see some of Vicky and Rob that you don't see on Vicky's Facebook page. Just so you know. So, but thank you all. Thank you, Megan, and we'll see you next time. Blessings, everyone. Take care.
Everyone.